Hello, Lindsey. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Empathic Leadership Summit. I feel very honored to have you here, considering your experience. How are you today?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. So maybe you could introduce yourself and give us a little bit of an idea of your background.
Yeah, happy to. So Lindsey Jarrell, I serve as the CEO of Healthlink Advisors, which is a consulting firm focused in healthcare technology, mainly in hospitals and large health systems in the US. I've spent my whole career in health administration and got more on the technology side early in my career. So in both working for hospital systems, but also doing consulting kind of half and half throughout my career, has been really my entire focus. And I have a passion for healthcare. It's close to my heart and wanting to try to do good things to improve our healthcare delivery system because we certainly need it here in the States for sure. And so just been a full career doing that and love it. I love consulting because of the change and leading the teams. So
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think that applies here in Ireland as well, in the UK. I think across the board, doesn't it, that we need that improvement and innovation around healthcare delivery. Amazing. So usually I've asked everyone else what their experience of empathic leadership has been or lack thereof. So for you as the receiver, the recipient of leadership, did you experience much empathic leadership in your career?
um, I would say not a lot. I certainly had experiences with empathic leadership, and I recognized I didn't call it that, right? Because I've learned so much here in the last 10 years and a lot of self-discovery and new terms, but I definitely experienced it. And when I did, I felt a strong attachment to the leader who was coaching me and helping me, or maybe I was able to observe it, other leaders, other divisions in the same company I was in, and that they had an empathic leader. And I always paid close attention to those folks. I felt a natural draw and a desire to really closely observe what they were doing and how they were doing it. Um, and, counter, I also was very sensitive to non-empathic leaders and watching how the teams were negatively affected by what I'll say is poor leadership, by really not thinking about the person or how your decisions land. And so I always filed those away, always wanting to be a leader when I was younger and coming up. I was always kind of keenly interested in lessons and how what things worked and what things didn't work. And so I wish I would have had more empathic leadership working for empathic leaders, but the little bit of time I did, it was a great impact on me.
Okay, that's amazing. It's a lovely description that you said you felt the attachment. So when
Yeah.
someone is there actually using, empathy to connect with others, there is a feeling of attachment and perhaps even more safety
Uh,
compared to
yeah.
the others. Yeah, very good. So it sounds like you've always been kind of ambitious. So, were you kind of, hungry to climb the career ladder from early days, or how did it go for you?
Yeah, I think that's a fair description. I was hungry early on, just always watching and trying to figure out how to get ahead. And I had my first little car detailing business when I was 16 years old, and wanting to advertise it and get more business and really figure things out. And so I've always just had a mindset of kind of an entrepreneurial mindset, I guess. And but I have worked for some really big companies as well, and paying attention to how they work and how you get ahead in there. And I think I was too focused on that. In fact, I know I was too focused on that,
Mm.
and not taking care of myself. But that it all kind of came full circle, and I learned a lot about myself. And the last, particularly the last 5 or 6 years, I'd say also the last 8 years, um, I've just been kind of on a journey and doing a lot more self-discovery, which has made me a better leader. I kind of regret I didn't have some of
Okay.
that knowledge early on.
Oh,
But yeah, I've been
that's
pretty ambitious throughout my life, throughout my work career.
okay. But it's lovely to hear that it's helped you so much. So does that mean that your maybe awareness of your high sensitivity or your high sensory abilities came later in your career?
Yeah,
Is that
very
how it
much
went?
so. I think I'm 4 years, actually, probably this month or next month,
Right.
that I found out I was highly sensitive
Okay.
specifically, which has made the biggest difference for me. 8 years ago, I left a job at a huge consulting company, one of the big fours, and I had a lot of responsibility across the globe. And it was just another example, yet another job of where every morning I woke up, my nerves were so frazzled, I'd have to put a mask on.
Yeah.
And sometimes every conversation, I'd look at my calendar and my heart would just sink because I'd have 8 or 10 meetings to get through that day.
Wow.
Right. And I really thought there was something wrong with me in that corporate world. And it's why I left several jobs, right? Because and I kind of assumed that I had some type of mental illness, and that I couldn't talk to anybody about that. Nobody could understand what I was dealing with. And if I didn't try to take care of myself or hide it from everybody, I might not be functional in my 60s, right? So there was a lot that would go on subconsciously that would worry me. And then I found the book, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I read Elaine Aron's book, had quite a few aha moments. And then I stumbled across a book by a gentleman by the name of Bill Allen, William Allen,
Yeah.
and read his book. Particularly, it was focused on men and high sensitivity, and it told a lot about his story of how he was raised. And there are so many parallels between my life and how Bill described his life coming up as a highly sensitive male. And that just changed everything, right? It was like somebody turned the light on in the room, which was fantastic. And so I've been really on a journey learning more about that and myself and why I'm the way I am, and adapting to that. I'm still learning to adapt and accept high sensitivity. I also have done another personality test, Myers-Briggs. I test out as an INFJ there, learning that and just being able to accept my personality type and my sources of energy and why I act the way I have has been a huge, a lot of adapting going on. I think back in my early days when I was a leader, a young leader, and my nervous system would be overwhelmed and I would be short with people and so detail oriented and critical of them, and then have guilt after that, not even understand why I'm being so critical of the folks who are trying hard, and then feel guilty because I made them feel not great, right? I was really stuck in these unhealthy cycles of not understanding me and what I needed so that I could be a better leader. And I think that's been one of the biggest learnings that I've enjoyed over the last few years. So,
Okay. Amazing. Like, thank you so much for mapping it out for us, because so many people, I'm sure, listening can relate to your experience. I know I can. I left lots of jobs for many, many years. I wondered what was wrong with me. Was it something that I needed to look into?
right.
Was it so? Yeah, and you start to feel that little bit crazy because you can't seem to function like the whole world around you. And then of course, being a male, being a man who is highly sensitive, there is another layer there completely because of obviously the expectations that society has in terms of our gender roles. So it's amazing to hear. And then I think what's really interesting to me, and actually I am INFP as well, so I totally get you. We're not too far away there. But when you're kind of saying that you had to adapt a lot over the years, and in fact, you had guilt because of the way you were responding to others. I think that's really interesting because maybe the highly sensitive leader will be portrayed as someone who's not maybe as critical or not as vocal or not demanding those expectations. But in fact, sometimes a high level of sensitivity can bring our self-criticism to a point that's unattainable, and maybe that translates through. Does that ring true? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it rings true a lot for me. And I'd put it this way, and this is something that doesn't even connect well in my brain, right? It's just like a tension I can't figure out. Um, if you would ask most of the people I've worked with in the last 25 years, if you would describe to them what a highly sensitive person is and say, is Lindsey a highly sensitive person? They'd say, no.
No.
Because the mask they saw when I was leading was overwhelmed, overstimulated, on edge, which made me come across as very effective in some, according to some measures, but I was often short. I was not looking for collaboration. I was looking for argument and debate. I was sizing people up, seeing who my best performers were as quick as I could so that I could get to whatever goal the company had set. And so they would not say I was empathetic or highly sensitive or aware, because what they saw was a very unhealthy version of me reacting to how I wasn't taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, and then just being full of self-criticism and self-doubt, it was kind of like a really ugly ball of yarn, right? And I'm so glad I kind of woke up to it and got out of it. Because it doesn't make a lot of sense when you're in it. And then people who get to know you in that role have a hard time recognizing or have had a hard time recognizing me outside of that role, because they're still expecting me to act a certain way. And I'm very different than I used to be in terms of wanting collaboration, showing empathy and being comfortable with it, slowing down, talking to people, telling them we care about them, right? Because all of that feels exactly right.
Yeah.
Where, the other way was never felt right. It just felt like I was kind of working for corporate greed.
Mm-hmm.
And that just didn't sit well with me, I guess.
Wow.
So
It's incredible to hear that. Like, it's the difference between that place of resistance where we're doing what we feel we should do and portray leadership the way we feel we should because of our environment, because of perhaps the training we've had, our upbringing, versus that lovely aligned place where you're allowing space for the humans around you. Was it
yeah.
was it difficult for you to experience that evolution of your leadership?
It was difficult because it was a little unnerving. It was I maybe a metaphor is I didn't feel like I had solid ground under my feet, because as I started to act different, it was a little uncertain for me, right? I even still have that today, right? We could be on an all hands call where all employees are on, we're all on video, and I want to share with something with them that is on my mind. And it sounds soft. It sounds empathetic. It sounds right. All these negative words that in the world of patriarchy and ego says I'm not supposed to talk that way as a CEO. Well, all of that's crap, right? And so as I step out and I talk about what I want to talk about and how we build culture and how we care for each other and what things are important, sometimes that still feels a little unnerving because I've got all these eyeballs staring back at me. But it's right. At the end of the day, I never get off one of those calls and share my authentic self. If I've shared my authentic self, I never regret it. Right. I never question whether or not it was right. So that's a learning curve. And, it's even doing this interview, right? It's a little unnerving about who's going to Google it and find it.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I kind of don't care about that anymore, because this is how we build a great culture. And we're very focused on building culture here in my company. Because when we have a great culture, we do a ton of client service work, right? That's what we are. We serve clients. And if we build a culture and get it right for our people, I always say magic happens at our clients, because people show up empowered and ready and confident, and they know the rest of the company has their back. And so it's a pretty cool thing once we get it working right.
Wow. Well, I have to tell you, I'm feeling hugely inspired over here, and I'm sure people watching will be feeling the same, like, I can relate to a lot of that. You know, I've been specializing in high sensitivity for several years now, and I'm still figuring it out, you know, and even running this summit is kind of a step out. You know, I think for all of us, there's a kind of a rising tide of awareness around this. And I think it's fantastic we're putting our voices together towards it. So do you feel, tell us this, what is the impact, because you touched on it there, what is the impact that your sensitivity has on your people, on your team?
Yeah, probably a few different observations, at least, you know, just from my view. One is, and I'm questioning this, like, do I actually see it or do I want to see it? I think it's both.
Yeah, okay.
Is a comfort in their role. So if somebody who's on my team, they're in a role and maybe they're not confident that they're doing 100% the best job in that role. Well, in the culture that I'm trying to create and that we're trying to create, they're comfortable enough to come forward and say, I'm a little worried. I'm not sure I'm hitting on all cylinders here. I think I need some help, or am I doing okay? Or I'm having a lot of anxiety about this part of my job. How can I do that better, right?
Mm,
If we can get that dialogue going and then reciprocate with, okay, well, here, let's talk more about that. To me, that's a win. That's a total win.
yeah, great.
It's because it takes their anxiety down. It takes their, will I be criticized? Do I need to worry about this, right? We say a lot, and I say to my team and people we're interviewing, you know, we hire for energy, intellect, and passion. Most everything else we can train. And so if we get those things right and you're a good culture fit and you pass the behavioral interviews, then you're in, right? And we want you to be successful. So that kind of creating all of that. So I think that helps a lot. And then the passion to take care of each other. We also have another kind of tenet inside our firm, and that is our team comes first, full stop. Our
Fantastic.
clients do not come first, and we will happily tell our clients they do not come first. Because when they find out who does come first, then they should realize, oh, I'm going to get better service out of them, right? And so knowing that we can take care of each other, if you need something, ask. If you need support, it could be knowledge-based. It could be, hey, I'm having a tough time at home. I need you to cover client meetings for the day, right? Because, you know, anytime anybody tries to abuse those kinds of things, they stick out like a sore thumb. You
Right.
don't have to worry about people abusing it.
Amazing.
They'll stick out, right? But when we do that and it works, it's kind of a beautiful thing. So those are some of the things that I think we're seeing benefits from, hopefully to build a healthier culture. So
Oh, it's amazing. And like, you know, turning that ship around to reframe things to create that culture. Like it's a long game, isn't it? You know, but the way
yeah,
you reframed, you know, if somebody can come forward if they're feeling anxious versus that might have been called underperformance in the past, isn't that right? Or, you know,
totally.
it's just switched it around so beautifully to empower the people who work for you and work with
Yeah.
you. It's incredible.
You know, I want to mention something that you just reminded me of. For my entire career, I've never had a performance review that was worth anything. And I have a passion about how much I dislike performance reviews. You can create any form you want, put them in a document, do them twice a year, 5 times a year, once a year, however you want it. I've never liked them because I've never got anything out of them because it was always about the form and the HR process.
Yeah.
Now, I realize there's a lot of HR professionals who get it. I haven't had the privilege of working with them. And so here we don't have performance reviews until this year. We finally got big enough and we had to institute performance reviews.
Okay.
Um, and because it was about the form and I never felt somebody was seeing me, right?
Mm,
And my wants, desires, and struggles. And like the tactical things on the performance plan, I always felt like, well, yeah, I could do that if I choose to do that. Why don't we talk about why I'm not choosing to do that? Motivation, stress, knowledge, safety, right? those things were never talked about because they weren't in the realm of control. So those performance reviews, it's kind of a hot topic for me. And that's, if we get to a good point where we have a good culture, then we can have good performance reviews because we can talk about the things that matter. So
yeah, and have a straight conversation about it instead
right,
of a ticking boxes conversation. I
right.
totally agree with that. That's fantastic. That's, again, is so inspiring to hear. So are you enjoying them now? Are they useful now that you've introduced them?
Um, they're okay. They're better than the ones I've had.
Okay.
And I don't mean this, it's easy to make everything sound like motherhood and apple pie as we stay here in the States, and everything's great here, right? We have daily struggles around culture building. I'm not perfect as a leader by any stretch of the imagination. There's still people who think I'm probably mean, so this is all a process, but the performance reviews that we've implemented, um, I spent a long time with my operating executive, and it's just 3 questions.
Okay.
And it's questions about them and what they want to achieve, which puts it back on then the reviewer to be able to, at that moment, have an articulate conversation around agreement around what they want to achieve. And sometimes what we've trained is it's okay if they say, I want to climb Mount Everest. That's my most important goal in the next 12 months. Okay, well, don't forget about us. We're your employer. We need some good work, right? Here's the things I need you to work on. How can we support you to climb Mount Everest?
Right.
Right? Within reason, how can we support you? Because that's clearly going to be your focus, and you're a valuable employee, and I don't want you to go anywhere. So let's talk about all the ththings that matter to you. That's the benefit of being a small company, right? You can't do that in the big companies, I get. But I've spent a lot of time researching purpose in the last 6 or 8 months, and I've struggled with this concept of what's your purpose. And I've thought a lot about what is my purpose. I've also kind of ridden the train of I've got to have a big fancy purpose, right? My purpose and what I've realized my purpose is to create environments either at home or at work where people can feel safe and supported so that they can be their best selves. And I got a long way to go to figure all that out, but that feels right. That's something I can control, and I know it brings me a lot of joy. So it's a continuing journey to get there.
Okay, that is fantastic. Absolutely love all that, and such a great example, climbing Mount Everest, because it's allowing recognition and respect for the fact that work and life are not two separate entities entirely. There's a blend there, isn't there? There's a harmony that needs to be respected, and then people are at their best. So I think that's amazing. And for yourself, have you managed to create a more safer, more grounded space for yourself through this evolution of your work and your
Yeah,
leadership?
great question. Gosh, I was listening to something the other day, and somebody said a very simple thing, and it's happiness is not a destination, it's the journey.
Mm.
Pretty obvious. I'm sure we probably all read that somewhere, right?
I'm sure indeed.
Um,
It's true
but
though.
I applied that to this being highly sensitive and being a leader and being a dad, and it's the journey, it's the day-to-day journey, right? So much I've been trained in my life to think it's all about some destination in the future.
Mm.
And so as I kind of recenter myself on it's a journey, I've been doing better than I have in a very long time, and that comes through uh, regular exercise. It comes through respecting my own boundaries when I'm overstimulated. Um, it took a lot of adjustment for me to know how many hours I can work a day and be effective
Mm.
and believe that's okay, because
Mhm.
patriarchy and egotism and how I was raised would say if you're not working 12 hours a day, you're not doing your right. And that's not right. That doesn't work for me. And so I'm learning, and
Right.
it is very much a journey, and to believe and kind of get on those new beliefs. The other thing I'll mention that's been super valuable to me is surrounding myself not all the time, but at retreats or chances to get together, being around other highly sensitive people.
Mm.
Um, and I've been fortunate enough to do some retreats for highly sensitive people, which are
Oh,
life-changing.
fantastic.
And, just being in that realm and knowing there are other people like you from all walks of life. My experience when we get highly sensitive folks together, nobody cares what you do, nobody cares who you are, right? That all the material things just kind of drop away and we find connection with each other.
Mhm.
That's really hard to do in the rush of life in the world we live in. So
That is amazing. I totally agree. I run a community myself online, a community of HSPs and empaths, and it's a magical space. And like, I run it as the coach, but I wouldn't miss it that hour in the week, because it is that place where you do feel more seen and heard, and you can have those conversations that kind of immediately drop further below the surface, don't they?
immediately, right? Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't take long. Yeah, which is such a joy to experience, and that it's an easy place to be for everyone involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can just, and when that happens, I feel known so quickly,
Mm.
right? Yeah, it's special for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, amazing. Just a couple more questions. I could talk to you
Yeah.
all day, but I'm going to ask a few more. Because I'm intrigued to know about your level of the perfectionism that maybe you used to hold tight to. Did you manage to let go a little of that? It's a big question for a HSP.
Yeah. I don't know. Probably.
Still there. Yeah.
It's probably better than it was.
Okay.
I'm kind of known as the inspector at work, right? In our
Okay.
consulting work, we do a lot of client deliverables, a lot of presentations, a lot of financial analysis. And so, I've got a bit of a reputation. Teams can work on stuff and pass it in front of me. I first have to flip through it to look for things my eyes will catch before I can read the document. So it's a little bit like the teacher with the red pen. Uh, but that's good, right? Because that helps our quality as long as I
That's
know
your
how to present that back and not be critical. Um,
that's your depth of processing coming into play there in a beautiful way.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in other aspects of my life, I think it's better than it was, right? So I'm one of the folks who don't like clutter, right? And clutter causes stress and the
Yeah.
visual inputs, right? But I've also now learned like, oh, I know why that's occurring. Let me not worry about that right now and make a choice to go out for a walk and
Mm.
right. And I don't have to feel overwhelmed. This is happening. Let me do something else. It's just very much a process. That's why I smiled
Yeah.
so much because it's a journey. So I think me managing it is probably better. I think it's still there. So
I think that's a beautiful learning point there. You're giving yourself a choice in that moment. It's like, okay, this is overwhelming. Everything needs sorting, but I'm going to choose to go for the walk, give myself
yeah,
that choice, and
which
that's, I
always
think,
helps.
yeah, when we know enough about how we function and how our brains are wired that bit differently, it's lovely to give yourself the choice in the moment. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, and I'm wondering about, you're learning all the time how to cultivate that culture of empathy within your business, within your organization. Um, what's the sweet spot, to ensure that it maybe doesn't lead to people very distracted, or
Yeah.
a place where you're like, is there a sweet spot between empathy and then, running a tight ship?
Yeah. So um, that's a great question. I was trying to think about how to talk about this, maybe through a couple of examples.
Okay.
Sometimes in my role, I need to make financial decisions, and they can be about pay raises for a year, or maybe our health insurance cost is going up so much, I've got to pass that health insurance expense on to the employees. And so we can know enough about the employees and team members to know like, oh, that's going to negatively infect them, right? And so we worry about them, or we worry about passing on a large expense increase, to them when folks look at us and we're being like, well, we're profitable. Why are you passing this expense on to me? And even I struggle sometimes with those kinds of decisions, right? what I've found is working really well is complete transparency.
Right.
And I haven't had any blowback on that. And it makes some of my executive team very uncomfortable when I get on the phone and say, this is how much money we made last year. This is what we're doing with it. This is our health insurance increase. This is how much we're going to pass on to you all. And here's why, because we have these metrics to worry about. And this is how we run a good business. And I found when folks have that information, they accept it, even if it's kind of it feels like a negative impact, because they understand all the levers in play. Now, another example might be just productivity, right? Is the team working hard? Or does everybody get a day off because they got a headache or they've had a bad day or they're feeling a little stressful?
Mm.
I haven't found that to be the case. The respect has been very mutual. If we choose the right team members who respect our culture, if you are having a bad day or have a headache or need time off, we call them, there's also mental health days. That's informal, but you can totally call and say, I need a day off. I got to go chill.
Mm.
Okay. What do you need us to cover? Right. Because the folks who abuse that, again, they'll stand out,
Yeah.
which may mean there's more there. And if there's more there that they need help with, and we've had that situation, we will go directly and talk to them about what's going on and offer, in the States, we call it EAP assistance, which is a program where they can get counseling and things like that. Make sure they know the tools that are available to them and stay appropriate about that. But if folks are doing it a lot, there's typically more there. And I think that's a time for our empathy to show, right? To say, what's going on? What do you really need? Because work's not working right now. So tell us what's going on and how can we help you?
Wow.
So I think there's a balance there. We don't have to kind of let the empathy get in the way of productivity. I think it actually helps it. So, because what I don't want is stressed out, burned out people. The last company I worked for, I saw that a lot because we worked folks so hard with no mercy. And, that's one of the reasons I left. And then, folks would just up and leave. And managers would say, I don't even understand why they're leaving. I'm thinking, well, how can you not understand why they're leaving? Right?
Yeah.
But
And they leave and they bring their creativity with them. The creativity that had no space to breathe when they're burnt out, and then
right.
it returns to them somewhere else. That is the most incredible learning, I think, for myself and for all of the attendees. I've written down here, empathy breeds respect and authenticity. I mean, it does seem that the more that we can offer empathy, the more that transparency and personal responsibility, personal power, and honesty and authenticity seems to actually come to the fore. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a no-brainer at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah. It feels like it on the other side of it. It
Yeah.
feels like a
Maybe I'm back to
no-brainer.
the apple pie, am I?
No, it does. There are certainly going to be people that we lead or people on a team who are just having a tough time of it. They essentially could be me 10 years ago, right? They're kind of wound up in the immediate gratification of society and all the things, and they don't really understand what's going on. So they are stressed out and burned out and overstimulated and probably not feeling well and unhealthy, right? They just got it all going on. And sometimes those folks are part of the team and they can't work well. It's not necessarily our place to say, hey, maybe you should go see a therapist. I see some things going on, right? That's not appropriate many times. And it'll cost them their job because they can't be dependable, because they can't produce deliverables, right? And that's quite frankly sad because my nature, you want to do everything you can for that person, but they're also maybe not ready to hear it or don't understand really what's going on. And it costs them their job and they're surprised by that. That's sad, right? When that happens, it doesn't happen very often. But I think as HSPs and folks who are very empathetic, we can sense that. We kind of know what's going on, and we're like, all I can do right now is I have a fiduciary responsibility to my company. I need to make this decision, and I wish you all the best. You know, here's some things that maybe you want to check into, but sometimes it just happens. So
Right. Okay. Okay. So there's tough choices. Obviously, that's just the way that sometimes being the leader,
yeah,
those choices
absolutely.
arrive at your desk sometimes, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Because if we
suppose.
don't make that decision, oh, I'm sorry, Sinead, if we don't make that decision, then we're not being fair to everybody else who works here, because that person's ultimately harming everybody. So
Right, right, okay. Yeah, that's why it's the tough decision, isn't it? I was just going to say that I suppose from my point of view, I'd be kind of going, bring in a coach, you know, get
yeah,
somebody who can be that objective voice, um, and can be that safe, confidential space, perhaps, you know. But I mean, it's not always applicable, but I've just seen the power that coaching can do within businesses like that, you know. Would
I
you
love
agree with
that
that?
idea. You're right. Yeah. And we have used coaches to great success. We've had a couple instances where it didn't work, but that wasn't the coach's fault. It was just more
Okay.
evidence that we needed to move on. Right.
Okay,
So
right, more data.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
okay, very good, very good. Oh, Lindsey, I've had the best conversation with you. It's been such a pleasure. I could honestly chat to you all evening. What are your hopes for the next few years? You know, are you excited about the direction of your business, of your
Uh,
organization?
yeah, great question. I am excited. We're doing well. Um, my hopes are continuing to work to build the right team that can take this forward for a very long time, and continuing to give responsibility. And because I've got just fantastic folks who are working with me, and giving them incremental more responsibility and watching them shine and kind of come forward. Um, there was a time in my career where I kind of wanted to be in the middle of everything. And one of the beautiful parts of what I've been learning in the last few years is that's not important. That's ego. And if I can find the right folks and show them responsibility and let them succeed and shine, I'm really learning to enjoy that and watch them blossom. And so I'm excited about that, because that just trickles down, and that's a very cool thing. So yeah, it's just more of the same, and working hard to stay on top of a good culture. So
Amazing, amazing, fantastic. Well, below the talk, there's definitely information about your organization and the incredible work you're doing. And Lindsey, thank you so much for your time today, for your energy, and for showing us exactly what empathic leadership looks like. Thank you so much.
you're so welcome. I love talking about this. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. I'll see you again, I'm sure. Take care.